The meeting is called to order. Looks like we don't have any electronic participation, so Pledge of Allegiance started.
Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Day. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Mrs.
Yep.
Weston, Mrs. Lowry, any discussion?
Yes, I want to make an amendment. I move that we just reorder a couple things. I want to move item M, which is about discussing some policies. In particular, it includes discussing policy BCFZ, which is the CTE committee membership. I'd like to move that up so that it precedes the item on our agenda where we will approve the CTE membership. That's item K. So I want to take the current M and move it in front of the K. My reasoning is that you remember last time we deferred voting on the CTE membership list because there was a conflict with our existing policy in terms of the number of members. And I think there's an easy resolution of that, which is just an adjustment to the policy. And so I'd like to resolve that before we vote on the membership.
What you're saying is make K1 the policy review, K2 headphone policy, and K3 CTE advisory requirement.
Yeah.
Okay?
Those,
That's
right,
what
I'd
you're-
like to move those to above M. So they, oh no, those are the former M's, right?
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to,
Move them ahead. And how about L2, Perrymont Park? We voted on it last time.
yes, but on the agenda tonight, we're voting on the actual resolution, the wording of the resolution.
Okay, that's L3.
Yeah, that's fine where it is as
Okay.
far as I'm concerned.
All right, so you have a motion on the floor?
So my motion is to move what's currently listed as M to be in front of K.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll,
So we're voting on my,
Your-
to the,
amending the agenda?
yeah.
Mr.
Yes.
Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Jalil,
Abstain.
Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul.
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie.
Yes.
We're back to
Dr.
the original
Tinsley?
motion.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Motion carries.
Back to the original motion now,
The amended motion.
the amended motion. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Connors,
Yes.
Mr. Jalil,
Abstain.
Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie,
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next one is chair comment. I don't have anything today. Next one is public comment. Dr. Day.
Okay. So let me read the usual explanation of our policies concerning public comment. Persons appearing before the school board will not be allowed to campaign for public office or promote private business ventures and should not use profanity or vulgar language or gestures, make comments about a public official or an employee that are not related to the public official or employee's official duties, engage in behavior that disrupts the meeting or intimidates others, or address the school board on issues that do not concern the services, policies, role, and/or responsibilities of the school board. Please do not clap, boo, or express approval or disapproval of speakers. Speakers should be treated with respect even if you disagree with their positions. Individual speakers shall limit their comments to 3 minutes. A speaker representing a group shall limit their comments to 5 minutes. The representative shall identify the group at the beginning of their presentation. A group may have no more than one spokesperson. The total allotted time for public comments at school board meetings is 30 minutes. Voicemail messages to be played are also limited to 3 minutes for individuals and 5 minutes for speakers representing a group. Priority will be given to in-person comments before voicemail messages in the following order. First, students. Second, staff. Third, parents or guardians, and fourth, community members. Public comments are reserved for the public to provide input. The board does not respond to comments, answer questions, or otherwise engage in discussion at this time. So we have two people who have signed up to make public comments, and following the order of precedence, we'll do, there's one staff person, that's Carl Luz. So, Mr. Luz, you can go first.
I'll be brief. See, only one note card. First of all, thank you all for doing what it is you do. It's not an easy job and not an easy position for you to be in. My name is Carl Luce. I'm president of the Lynchburg Education Association. And I want to keep it very simple for this first meeting. I just wanted to get in front of you and see you and talk to you a little bit. And I wanted to let you know what employees want. Employees want a chaos-free year. That is what we want, a chaos-free year. We want good, sound, well-thought-out decisions. We want long-term planning. We want no surprises. We want decisions made on what's best for our kids. We don't care about politics. We don't care about political motivations in any way, shape, or form. We want decisions made for what's best for our kids, period. So what two-word thing sums it up? What do we want to see this year? Common sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Our second speaker is Kimberly Dyke-Harsley.
Good evening. Three things quickly today, and welcome new school board members, and welcome back former school board members. Community violence spills over into schools, homes, wherever. Don't want to wait until it happens when there's Code of Virginia puts out a guideline or curriculum for elementary school gun safety. 22.1-204.1. By the way, this was passed during Governor McDonald's first term, 3 months after he became governor of Virginia. Thank you to the legislator Linwood Lewis, Jr. Local school boards may provide firearm safety education programs for students in the elementary school grades. This sounds like prevention. To assist local school boards electing to provide such programs, the Board of Education shall establish curriculum guidelines for a standardized program, and I'm just going to summarize. It's accident prevention, principles of firearm safety, and rules upon which the Eddie Eagle Gun Safe program, which is offered by the NRA, is based. Also, I'd like to share, in reference to not having a chaotic year, just in general for children, there's a lot of time the phrase, it starts at home. What starts at home? A lot of stuff starts at home, and it spills over into school. Starting strong. So there's a school psychology review wrote in 2016, June. A school-based indicated prevention program during the transition to kindergarten. It's a school-based prevention targeting behavior problems, student-teacher relationships, and parent-school connectedness for children with or at risk for disruptive behavior problems during the transition. And there's information about that I can share by email for the rest of you. And then the third thing I wanted to bring up, I really do appreciate school bus drivers. My grandfather owned a school bus and drove one. My uncle drove a school bus. I took the training, but I didn't drive the school bus. I went back to being a taxi driver. Rest in peace to the pedestrian who was a faithful, loyal customer. I still want to ask that all new and veteran school bus drivers, I don't know who can relay this, just because the buses are different, just because you're running late or running early or the school bus is packed does not mean you need to drive unsafe. Risky turns are not okay. They're not. So that's all. Prevention, looking at things to address the children before they get into the actual school system, looking at behavior, things at home, parenting, and safety. All of these items came under my thoughts today to share with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are the only two individuals who signed up. Were there any phone
No, sir.
comments?
Any emails?
No, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Day. Next one is consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
Mrs. Lowry, is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Tinsley? Any discussion? Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Jalil,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie,
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next one is J1, finance report, Dr.
Okay, time for our monthly finance report with Ms. James.
The happiest time of the school board meeting. Yay!
Chaos-free report.
Exactly. Good evening, Chairman Gupta, members of the school board, and Dr. Edwards. You have before you the July 31st, 2024 month-end financials. So they look a little bit different this month. I've reformatted the report slightly to fit within the theme of LCS documentation. And I have added a month-to-date, year-to-date column for the expenditures to give you a greater level of detail on the financials to review monthly. That way you can go in and see where we are in comparison for prior months. As of July, which marks 8.33% of the fiscal year passing, the percent of revenues collected versus the original appropriation at the beginning of the year was 6.14%. That's an increase in comparison to last year's at the same month, fiscal year of almost 3%, which is a good thing. The amount of expenditures versus the original appropriation is at 6.7% year to date. Total expenditures inclusive of encumbrances equates to 75.54%. As a reminder to what we've previously discussed, July is considered period 13 in a fiscal year for audit purposes. It is the month where we are processing financials from the last month of fiscal year 2024 and the current fiscal year 2025 first month. It's a month where I strongly recommend using a pencil with a very large eraser as the auditors are getting in there and moving financials around and distributing them out of period 13 into their respective months that they're supposed to be in. So there were a few notable variances in our expenditures this month. If you'll reference line 13, which is function 2100, the administration line was at 102.29% expended, including encumbrances. This variance is attributed to a portion of the payroll being reported in 2025 that has to be reversed back into 2024 for audit purposes. As we've discussed, payroll doesn't end right on June 30th. A portion of that payroll spills over into July, so we have to JV that back into 2024. Line 21, function 2200, attendance and health. This is at 116%, which is the same issue that we have to do auditing and move those funds back into 2024, and that'll be completed when the auditors have reviewed all those expenses. Line 39, which is function 3500, school buses, regular purchases, you'll see an encumbrance that's associated with the purchase of those grant-funded 25 electric school buses. That amount should be reversed back into 2024 as well, after the audit concludes. Function line 76, which is function 6200, site improvements. This encumbrance is associated with salaries that are reimbursed by the city through the capital improvement program. So there are employees that work with the capital improvement program for LCS that the salaries are reimbursed by the city. So you should see that amount tick down throughout the fiscal year. Line 84, which is function 8100, classroom instruction, is at 101.86%. This is another variance that's associated with the auditing period 13 that has to move back into fiscal year 2024. Statement of revenues, there are no items really to address at this point since we've only gotten in 1 month of the fiscal year. The monthly summary report, so the data is incomplete on that report because these are as of July. And so there is, the health insurance summary for the first month is not completed because we're waiting on, it will not be available until the 2024 audit's finalized and that data is made available to have a starting point to start for 2025 expenses. The audit is 85% complete. Finance must have all of the items submitted to the auditors by September 18th. So if you reach out to a finance employee, aka me, and the responses are a little delayed, we're working through that audit process as quickly as we can to try to meet that deadline of September the 18th. So that concludes my report. I will entertain any questions you have at this time, Dr. Day.
So when you say the audit is 85% complete, you mean the LCS portion of the audit?
The LCS portion
Not
of
the
it,
city.
yes, sir. So what will happen is, so we're a component unit of the city, and so we have to have our audit documentation completed before the city has to have theirs. So we are 85% complete in LCS finance. We have to send our audit information to the auditors by September the 18th, so the auditors can pull all of the units together and start working on the overall transmittal and audit documents. So we are about 85% complete in the deliverables that we have to present to the auditors. And the due date on that, the deadline date on that is September the 18th. We're working diligently. We do not want to hold up the process in any way for the city to be able to complete their portion of it. So we've been working hard to get that done.
Other questions? I have a couple. So you're moving this 700,000 plus from 25 to 24, and 24 budget is balanced, right? So when you receive that money back, remember I've been hearing that money will come back to the city school system, right? We are not paying any money for those.
So there's a
electric buses.
local match. Are we talking about the school buses, sir?
Yes, the electric
Okay.
school bus. So how will you account that in your balance sheet when the money comes in 25, in this current fiscal year?
So there's a local match to that, and that's 700 and, I think it's 25,000 or 7,000. That is the local match piece of what LCS has to kick in for that grant. The encumbrance that you're seeing is most likely attributed to an invoice that hasn't completely been paid yet. So that invoice has to be paid and reversed back to 2024, so that expense lands in fiscal year 2024. So the invoice most likely came in after the 6/30 deadline, and so we'll need to pay it and reverse that back. That's why it becomes an audit function, that the auditors will get in there on the trial balance and reverse that back.
So remind me my old memory that 700,000 of city match or the local match came out of our operating line, or did it came out on top of the level funding they gave us?
I'm gonna have to refer to Dr. Wodick on that. He wrote the grant.
So you'll recall that those funds were carried forward from fiscal year '23, actually, from leftover money from that year. So that was the June that we said we had some extra money. We didn't want to send that back to the city. And part of that 70 was part of that went into the following fiscal year. So there should be a consistent sort of revenue side thing on there. I think it's just a timing thing on the expenditure side.
Yeah, and notice that that's in an encumbrance line.
Yeah.
So that's due to a purchase order, that most likely the invoice came in after the fact, and so the purchase order just needs to be zeroed out, and that expense paid off that purchase order for it to go back in as an FY '24
I'm just
expense.
trying to think as a layman, I got $7 in my pocket, so I spend them on buying electric buses, right? They came out of our pocket. That's why I wanted to clarify that. Whether
Yes.
it came out from, not in technicality, which year or which encumbrance, you know what I'm saying? Those are terms, but it came out of our operating budget.
Yes,
Yes.
it was a local match, yes, sir, out of allocated operating.
And on your health sheet, you had a asterisk called contingency.
Yes.
What is that? Does that mean the health reserve is going, because the deficit went down from 1.9 million to almost 900 something, but the numbers don't add up to,
So that contingency was what the school board requested that city council allocate or release. It was a part of the holdback from FY 2024 budget. So that was what the school board went to. Those numbers for 2024, I left in there. I don't have numbers to put in the 2025 slots because those will not come until the audit is completed for 2024.
the reason I'm
So
asking
I
is,
left that in there.
the reason I'm asking is in July, we have 962,000 deficit. So that's the carry forward deficit, or that's the deficit end of the last fiscal year?
We do not know the exact number of what that's going to come in at, and so I don't want to put any numbers out there that I'm not positive about. So I would say we can anticipate a smaller deficit than what we had last year, but I'm not going to articulate what that deficit may be, just because the audit will have to run its course.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So Dr. Day, next one is the policy review.
Right, which probably appears as item M on your printed agenda.
Yeah, it's a K1 now.
Yeah. So there's several policies here that I think we need to talk about. The first, and the reason I'm asked that we move this discussion up to where we are currently having it, is about the membership for the CTE Advisory Committee. So this committee is required by Virginia Administrative Code. If you want to look at the reference, it's 8 VAC 20-120-50. Now that administrative code does not put a cap on the size of the committee. Only our local policy, BCFZ, puts a cap on the size of the committee. And so I propose that we modify BCEZ to remove the cap of membership of 20, no more than 20 members, and to remove the specification of how many CTE programs there are. It currently says 14, and I don't know why our local committee has to nail down the exact number of those. So I would propose, let's see if I go to, if you want to look at K on your agenda, it has the language from our BCFC printed there. So my proposal is the line that starts membership, the General Career Technical Advisory Committee, and then we would strike out may have a maximum of 20 members. So the sentence would then read, the General Career Technical Advisory Committee includes but is not limited to, and then the rest of the language, parents, students, educators, retired professionals. And then strike out the number 14 from the second sentence. So it would say each of the program areas in CTE has an advisory committee without specifying the total number. So my proposal is to make those two changes and adjust the grammar in the first sentence to accommodate them.
You're changing the policy in the advisory committee language, which is policy BCFG, right? That's what you're referring?
BCFZ, yes.
You're making a motion to amend the language?
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Mr. DePaul, any discussion on amending the language? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Jalil,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews,
No.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie,
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Now, there are a couple other policy issues here. Tish, did you want to say anything at this point?
Yeah, I would like to make, I don't know if you call it an amendment, but a motion to dissolve the Equity Task Force. Because they're, and this is based on not producing the academic goals last year, and also it's not a required committee. So we didn't get
Second.
anything out of them last year, we should have.
So you made a motion to
Yeah, I
remove
make a
Equity
motion
Task
to
Force.
dissolve the Equity Task Force.
Second.
The motion is on the floor. Is there a discussion on that motion? So you're amending the policy to delete the
She's
language.
proposing deleting the Equity Task Force from that policy. I have a couple comments.
Go ahead.
You know, we used to have a Director of Equity and Community Relations, but that position has been eliminated. My personal opinion about this is that I think at this stage, we are all sensitive to the importance of equity considerations. And a case in point would be our academic progress presentation last time, and we saw how, in particular, there was a strong concern for how well our students from the Black community are faring. That comes just naturally to us these days. I don't think we need a special committee to be telling us when we need to be thinking about those things. I think it's, at this day and age, I think it's just ingrained in us. And so I personally don't agree with, I support the motion. I don't see the need for the Equity Task Force. I tried to look over the past listings on board docs to see if I could find when the Equity Task Force made a report to this board. Now, of course, there was one last October about transgender policy, but I could not find any other report that the Equity Task Force had ever made to the board. So that, again, indicates to me that it hasn't been contributing a whole lot. That's my personal opinion, so I support this motion.
Is there a discussion on the motion on the floor?
I think it would be a mistake to disband the Equity Task Force because it certainly gives the impression that the school board is not concerned about equity, whether we're talking about racial or gender or whatever. And I think that's something that we need to be very concerned about. I know that there are people in the community who represent various other organizations who have expressed their concern about those kinds of things. So I think it would appear that we're not concerned if we disband the Equity Task Force.
Now that you say that, I remember last year asking a couple of presenters the difference between equality and equity. And the speaker couldn't really answer and asked for help from another person. So the differentiation there is not clear for many people. And I've always thought of equality in my my philosophy and my outlook on helping people and keeping things fair and even for people on the starting line of whatever vocation or whatever sport or whatever activity. So equality coming into the school system is a need and a necessity. Equity is more of a newer term in my world, and I haven't seen its application through this particular task force. I've told someone a year ago, I think, just about, that these 6 things need to be applied to the school board. They need to be done, and so that we can see the product of these things, working with the school board to make these things happen. But I haven't seen more than one of them clearly. So in thinking about this just now, I don't recall the 6 things, the 6 purposes of the Equity Task Force to assist with the evaluation of equitable practice in 6 areas: staff recruitment and retention, students, academics, and climate, training all stakeholders, including parents, students, staff, school board, community, engaging and involvement, all stakeholders, including parents, students, staff, school board, and community, cultural diversity, the celebration and recognition, access and barriers, increase access opportunities and remove of barriers, removal it should be. And they meet 4 to 5 times annually, and I haven't gotten any reports on this as well. I don't recall the force moving the needle on these things. So I will have to say that I'm not impressed with the product of this particular force, and that's my impression of it this time.
Mr. DePaul?
I agree with what Ms. Preston is saying, that the appearance of not caring is very important. As a board, we need to care, and we can no better perform that than to actually show it in the way that we handle our policies. I am in agreement with ending the committee, but we have to follow with what Mrs. Preston says. We need to be better stewards of our responsibility. So I agree with you on that portion, absolutely 100%. I just think that we need to exhibit that. We don't need a committee to exhibit that. We need to exhibit that, period. So I'm not in favor of the committee, but I am in total favor of what Mrs. Preston is asserting.
Let me ask a question. Would it be the appropriate response to have some of us develop some specific strategies and/or responsibilities for the Equity Task Force? Because if we just say you're on the Equity Task Force and there's not a real specific delineation of what those responsibilities are, I remember teaching, and y'all all know I've taught for a long time, but I remember in a classroom saying fair is not always equal. But we need to have a conversation about that. Because when we're talking about equity, are we really talking about everybody's got to have exactly the same thing? Or are we talking about we need to be fair in making sure that everybody has what is needed? But that's a conversation that we need to have, first of all, and we need to display and/or pass on to the people that work with Lynchburg City Schools, because we represent a diversity. And my opinion is not necessarily the same as yours, because we're not necessarily the same race or the same gender or the same age or whatever. But until we have conversations, we can't determine what is fair.
Dr. Day?
So I think another way to phrase what Mr. DePaul has said is, this responsibility is not something we should farm out to another community, but we should own it right here.
Yes, we should.
I think that was his point. And I think that, in my understanding, is in agreement with what you said. It's our responsibility to be sensitive and attentive to those issues. It's not something we kick off to the side and leave it to someone else to deal with.
Other discussion?
Are we to ask other board members questions about this committee, or is it just our opinion about the committee?
It's your opinion.
Does anyone who supports this committee have a general idea of the production of their helping us in recruitment and retention of staff, I think? Or these other 5 things?
I think to put the responsibility of hiring on that committee would be irresponsible, because we don't put that on other committees.
Okay, the second one is student academics and climate. I don't think of them when I think of academics. And last year I was part of the Student Success Committee, and I don't think we heard from them on the force.
Right, other discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. Jalil,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews,
No.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston.
Can you restate the motion?
Motion to dissolve Equity Task Force from, it was seconded by Mr. DePaul.
I'd have to say no.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie,
Yes.
Dr. Tansley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, we still have a couple items under M. Another thing I think we need to clarify is some issues with regard to the parent liaisons on facilities and finance, legislative advocacy and community relations, and the academic success. I think I have said in the past that my understanding was that parent liaisons did not have voting privileges, but I think, in fact, I'm incorrect, because the current language in that policy talks about what happens in the case of a 2-2 tie vote. So the only way a committee of 3 members with 1 parent liaison can have a 2-2 tie vote is if the parent liaison is voting. So I think the way our language stands is that parent liaisons are, based on the way it's worded, are presumed to have voting rights. Now, I just want to make sure that it's clear and that that is what the board intends. And then secondly, there's another issue which is regarding quorum. Are the parent liaisons to be counted in terms of quorum? So quorum always requires a majority. So if we're counting them for quorum, that means 3 people need to be present for a meeting. So if 2 of the board members that are on the committee are present, 1 board member is not, and the parent liaison is not, the meeting cannot take place. Whereas if they are not counted for quorum, if 2 of the 3 board members are present, then the meeting can take place. So I think there's 2 issues here. Is having the parent liaisons vote what we intend. I believe that's what the policy currently implies, in spite of my erroneous interpretations in the past. And secondly, I think we need to resolve what does quorum mean on a committee with 3 board members and 1 liaison.
Is this committee special, so we have to resolve, or quorum has a standard rule, right? Majority needs to be present.
So majority of what?
And you just said, all 4 are voting members based on the
If
policy.
that's what we want, but is a parent liaison a member of the committee?
If not, then what are they?
They're a liaison. So what does that mean?
That means they're a voice for the parents.
Yeah.
The parents' voice at the
Yeah.
meeting.
It doesn't mean they're a member.
I agree, it
They
does
just
not
have
mean
a
they're a
say.
member. Their status is different, but the policy implies that they are allowed to vote. They have voting privileges.
Would you please read the verbiage that implies that?
Okay, let me pull up the policy. So in particular, referring to finance and facilities, this is, in addition to the 3 school board members, the committee also has a parent liaison. In the case of a 2-2 tie vote, the default action is to send the item to the full board. So if you're going to have a 2-2 tie vote,
Gotcha.
that means the parent liaison must have been voted.
Now, is that our policy?
That's the standing policy as it exists on board docs now.
Question, so why do we have 3 board members on committees?
So that we don't have a tie.
As opposed to more or less?
Well, no, I guess my thought process is, and I wasn't trying to quiz you, I was just thinking out loud. In order for a meeting to be a meeting of the board or a committee of the board, don't we have to have more than 2 people present to be considered a?
Not if there's only three members present, only 3 members on the committee. It's a majority of the committee.
I guess what I'm getting at, though, is it truly a school board committee if there are only 2 people present, 2 board members present?
On a practical level, what happens is if a board member is missing, the board clerk is informed, and the chair is the ex officio member. So I show up or a designee shows up. So practicality is different from theoretical thing. So the language is what the theory says. What in reality could happen, it's a 5. Technically, it could be a 5-member vote.
Right.
4 board members, and you can call a liaison. I'm not going into the language of it. The intent was to have the parent representation on the board. That was the intent, right?
Yep.
And so you can make their role subpar, below the regular board member. To me personally, that's not good. They are parent liaison, but you can use the verbiage liaison, parent member, whatever you want to call them, but they are the voice of the parents on the school board. Otherwise, they are not second-grade citizens on that committee, just to sit there and being rubber stamped. That was not the intent, at least from my side. So theoretically, we can read the language any way we want, but technically, practically, there are 5 members could attend that board meeting at any point.
So several comments. Dr. Gupta just made the point that the board chair is an ex officio member of every one of our committees. That means that if he chooses to attend, he has voting rights. But Robert's rules says ex officio members are not counted for purposes of quorum. So I'm making the point that there can be details about how quorum is determined, not simply based on how many board members are present.
So
Secondly, I had several points I was going to make.
So what will make you satisfied to make those parent members at par with everybody else? What language needs to be changed?
I don't think we need, as far as voting, I don't think we need to change anything.
Yeah.
But as far as quorum, I think we do need to clarify it. So we simply need to say whether they should be counted as part of quorum or not. Let me make another point, because at the end of last year, I contacted all 3 of the parent liaisons on committees from last year, asking them to give me some feedback, because last year was the first year we had parent liaisons. In particular, I only heard back from 2 of them, but I had phone conversations with those 2. And I asked them how they felt about voting versus non-voting. And the one response I got was that, that if the parent liaisons are going to vote, that increases the incentive for them to be there. So at least in one of the cases, that particular parent was not present maybe about half the time. And it was that individual who told me that if their position had been a voting position, they would have felt a stronger incentive to be there all the time. Another comment is, one thought that went through my head is, well, gee, do we want to give people that were never appointed to the school board voting privileges within the board? But on the other hand, committees have no power in themselves other than to make recommendations to the board. The only actual decisions are made here. So for that reason, I have no problem with having the parent liaisons vote. The policy already says what would happen in the case of a tie vote. The tie vote is it comes to here, which is at variance from Robert's rules. Robert rules says a tie vote means the motion fails. But our language in this policy says at the committee, a tie vote, 2-2, the motion does get recommended to the board.
Mrs. Lowry.
And on our committee last year, April Watson was our parent liaison, and we let her vote. She voted along with us.
So my personal suggestion is we don't change anything about voting, but the issue I'm just not sure about is quorum.
You want to make a motion to change the quorum rule, or?
Well, I'm not sure what I want to happen. I'm hoping somebody else will have some thoughts about, do we want parent liaisons to be counted for purposes of quorum or not?
Could we assess the status of ex officio or something similar to the parent liaison so that they have the voting rights and they're not counted as quorum?
Sure, we could put in just a statement, parent liaisons are not included for quorum purposes.
That's easy.
Yeah.
Dr. Tinsley.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was getting at. I may have been misinterpreted earlier. No question that parents need to be able to vote. That wasn't my comment. My comment was, I just don't want legally something to come back and say, well, that wasn't a board committee because only 2 board members were there. So I was kind of leaning towards what I was getting at, was that maybe we should have the quorum be 3 board members. But then all 4 people can vote. I absolutely think parents, their parent liaison should be able to vote. But maybe the quorum should be 3 board members.
Yeah, if I'm a parent, I would not spend my time just to be a rubber stamp and sitting there and watching the meeting.
Yeah.
I like to get involved. So involvement comes at the end of a decision where a vote is taken. And when you talk about equity, equality, that's where the equality is. I'm an equal member of the task force. And so I should be able to vote. Without that, I'm not wasting my time. You know what I'm saying? And then parents don't really have a voice. If you express, I've been told from day one I'm here, you express your voice through your vote, right? And that applies to our school board too, I assume. So, Dr. Dave, we defer it for you to come back to us for any quorum changes you like to make to the.
Would you want me to make a motion now?
If you'd like to make a motion now, that's perfectly.
So I will move that we add to those, to the statements of the 3 committees that do have parent liaisons. Student discipline does not, for legal reasons. But for the 3 committees that do have parent liaisons, I move that we add the language, the liaisons are not counted for purposes of quorum.
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Jalil,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes.
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie,
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Headphone policy, Dr. Day.
Yes. So now we're on to the headphone policy. I think I wrote to all of you about this. We talked about it, I think, a little bit last week, and I formulated a proposal to modify policy JFCZ to accommodate the use of privately owned headphones as part of a legitimate instructional purpose in the classroom. And I attached to tonight's agenda is my draft of that revision, JFCZ-4 is the name of the file. And the only changes that I made were in the definition of what a personal communication device, where it does talk about earbuds and headphones, I put in the language regardless of the mode of connectivity. So there's no ambiguity about whether we're talking about wired headphones versus wireless. Any headphone, regardless of how it connects, would fall within the scope of personal electronic communication device according to my proposed revision. And then in each of the paragraphs talking about high school, middle school, or elementary school, I put in the following sentence. An exception is allowed for the use of privately owned, wired, over-the-ear headphones at the direction of the teacher as part of a lesson.
Dr. Edwards, could I ask Ms. Pugh for her suggestions?
Certainly, and I provided some feedback, as did Dr. Edwards. I certainly agree here. I do think you all need to consider being a little bit more specific, because wired is one thing, and that's fine. But when you talk about over the ear, do you mean over the ear? Do you mean over the ear? So there's many different varieties of over the ear headphones, and in order for our families, our students, our teachers, our administrators to be clear and not have to make judgment call, I think you need to be a little bit more specific, or not include the over the ear, just wired. But that's my opinion as a classroom teacher.
So what I'm guessing is you are in agreement with these changes suggested by Dr. Day.
But not
No, I'm
completely.
not.
She wants some clarity about, she's okay with the definition at the top.
Absolutely.
So she's suggesting that maybe we take out the over-the-ear and just insist on wired. I think the reason for the over-the-ear is so that it's visible to the teacher. For instance, right now, I have hearing aids in. Now, you probably can't tell by looking at me from across the room. But if there was a wire running from my earbuds or whatever they are down to my computer, then you would know. So the point is to make it visible to the teacher that the student has a listening device plugged in. Over the ear was intended to do that. I think what I understood that to mean is with a band across the top and a thing that covers the ear. But you point out that may not be clear enough language.
Correct, and I also think that that's limiting in terms of what families can buy and purchase. But I do agree that even if it's an earbud, if it's a wired earbud, the wire has to go from the earbud into the computer so the teacher would see. If it's an over-the-ear, sort of like this that has the earbud that goes in and it's wired, the teacher still sees. The most obvious would be over the head that, covers the ears. But I do think there's all sorts of variety of headphones, but as long as they're wired and the teacher sees that wire going into the student computer device, that's what I think will cover it for our families.
Just
Edwards.
only because Carl Luce is here and he's a teacher. So we want to know what happens in schools. Why don't we ask somebody who teaches in schools, if you don't mind?
The wire is the key. We can see the wire come in, whether it's connected to a phone in their pocket or connected to their Chromebook. The wire is the key. Once
wire
it's
makes it
wired, we
visible.
can spot it very easily.
Question, sir.
Yes.
Would the term regardless of the mode of connectivity, would that cover things for you? Because it's in here.
Yeah. What we just want to make sure it's wired.
It's any mode of connectivity, wired, wireless, whether it's over the ear,
Yeah, wireless
hidden.
is not good. We don't want wireless, anything.
Yeah.
Because like you said, they get little bitty now and then
And-
really
and
hard to see.
they could be used-
Especially if you have somebody with long hair.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I was going to say, if you as a teacher have your students doing something that actually uses, something that connects, if it's wireless, they could also have that linked to their phone, which might be against policy, but on in the bag and be doing something. So I think we're
Wired.
all in agreement here.
Yeah.
So may I make a suggestion to modify what I proposed? In the 3 paragraphs that talk about high school, middle school, and elementary school, if I just take out the phrase "over the ear." So it would say, an exception is allowed for the use of privately owned wired headphones at the direction of the teacher as part of a lesson.
Yes, sir.
Does that satisfy?
Yes, thank you.
So I'm going to remove over the ear.
That does help, Mr. Lewis? Good. Making a motion for that policy, Dr. Day.
So, okay, so I will move that we adopt what I've written up as JFCZ-4 with the deletion of the over the ear from the 3 paragraphs on high school, middle school, and elementary school.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Conner and Mr. DePaul. Any more discussion on it? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Gilio,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes.
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie,
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next one is CTE Advisory Required Membership, Dr. Edwards.
So this is coming back to you because you deferred it for the vote. And it is the membership that Mr. Dooley has recommended, absent any new, well, I think it's also inclusive of perhaps a vote that we had last week proposed by Mr. Connor, but absent anybody else. I don't know if anyone else was on the application process, so it's just up for approval.
So we have the list presented by Mr. Dooley plus Mr. Dunton and Mr. Gary Woodson.
We approve those, the addition of those.
They are
2
in that
names last
list.
week. So the motion actually is already on the table because we made the motion last week. We just deferred the vote
Right.
today.
Any discussion on that motion which was on the table last week?
Do we still have a problem with the word may? May have a maximum.
No, that's no longer in our policy because we removed it a few minutes ago. We removed the language about a maximum.
Remember, he read it, it says now, after advisory committee includes but not limited to. We struck out may have a maximum of 20 members.
Yeah, that language is no longer part of the policy.
And we struck out the number 14.
Yes, we did.
Yep.
Did you vote on that? Do you remember voting? You remember voting?
It was a few minutes ago.
Let me reiterate. So it has Mr. Dooley's list plus the 2 names suggested by Mr. Connor, right?
Yeah.
That's the motion. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Gilio,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes.
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie,
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley.
I'll abstain.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next one is gifted plan, Dr. Edwards.
So it is time for us to bring the annual gifted plan. It is up for discussion tonight, so Mrs. Cruz is here at the podium to go over a brief overview of the plan and take any questions that you may have about it. And I don't know if Ms. Pugh had anything to add. Nope.
I do not.
So take it away, Ms. Cruz.
Good evening. I won't take much of your time, but we are very, very proud of the work that's been put into this and to make this plan more inclusive and to grow in the direction we see that the board and members of our community want to grow. So for the local plan for education of the gifted, Each board must review and approve a comprehensive plan for the education of the gifted. The plan must include specific explanation of the school division's implementation of the regulations governing education services for gifted students. Each section of this plan that has been included does cover and address those specific procedures and information throughout the document. We are part of Region 5, which participate in a technical review process starting in October of 2024. So our division statement of the philosophy for gifted education, Lynchburg City School believes that all students have the potential for learning at high levels. It is the division's philosophy that gifted students exist within all ethnic, geographic, and socioeconomic groups. Our current mission statement, which I will not read that, but we all know and embody, is the division's goals of every child by name and not by need to graduation and beyond. And this is an extension of that mission each and every day to encompass all students. Our goals, our overall goals are to provide continuous and systematic identification and placement of gifted students, including a process to evaluate and improve the identification of students that ensures equitable representation of students from historically underrepresented groups. This is especially important for us to ensure that we are growing our gifted community and representing those in various fashions. To provide a continuum of services which addresses the needs of all identified gifted students and ensuring that that doesn't just embody one particular subgroup of students or subset of skills. And to provide differentiated curriculum and instructional opportunities that are reflective of the unique needs of all gifted students, and we want that to be a K-12 experience. I want to provide opportunities for professional development that supports teachers in the development and implementation of differentiated instruction for students identified for gifted services, and that includes working with our local colleges and universities to ensure that professional development opportunities are provided and enhance the ability to serve those students who are identified. Establish processes and opportunities that are inclusive of all students with diverse abilities, beliefs, and cultures during the identification and education of gifted students. We know that that doesn't just fit one box for our students, and we want to make sure that we take advantage of that during this process. And also to increase family and community awareness of advanced opportunities in Lynchburg City Schools. That has been at the height of all of our conversations throughout this, to ensure that our families know that it doesn't just include one specific student, one school, one area, that we want to make sure all of our students have the opportunity and we can essentially glorify what they are gifted and talented in. So what does that screening, referral, identification, service procedures, what does that look like? Our screening process starts in second grade through the COGAT, and that's our cognitive abilities test, the gifted screening data collection, writing samples, problem-solving interview, and teacher perception inventories. The referral process includes an 86 local percentile rank or higher. The referral is initiated by our parents, guardians, school personnel, and/or community members. That's key, so that we know that that can be included. And parent permission is required to collect data to proceed in that process. As we identify, data collection documents for screening are collected. Gifted Review Committee scores components of the student's portfolio using rubrics. C&I, our curriculum and instruction team, reviews the scoring rubrics and overall score data to determine level of gifted service options for referral of students. Some of those services currently include our depth programs, which are at the schools, the Zoned Gifted Opportunities Center, grades 6 through 8, which is something that we have discussed since last year when I came to LCS, and it's been discussed prior to that, are those gifted opportunities, advanced and accelerated course offerings, the school-based activities and enrichment opportunities, and our grades 9 through 12, that advanced accelerated course offerings that are there, AP coursework, Central Virginia Governor School, Early College STEM Academy, et cetera. So as we present this plan to you, what are our changes and highlights? The elimination of the Naglieri nonverbal ability test, that was something that we offered to first grade students, and I'll provide a little bit more detail about that in just a second. The adoption of the COGAT administered in 2nd and 6th grade. Teacher perception inventories collected at completion of each grade level. New LCS students previously identified as gifted in other divisions are provisionally placed until LCS screening is completed during the established window, and classroom observations completed by teachers to identify gifted behaviors. The elimination of the Naglieri is not because we don't like it, we don't love it, but essentially for the Naglieri, it is an inclusive test, and it does the same piece that the COGAT does. So we want to make sure that we're not over-testing our students, and we want to make sure that we're spacing that out. So the importance of spacing that to our second graders, which that's there already, and to our sixth graders, in case we have students who are developing and taking that professional, a pre-professional route, or they want to do some of the advanced coursework, we're identifying early and often, and we're making sure that we are taking care of all of our students and all needs. Yes, ma'am.
My only question is, let's say you have two children that are siblings, and one did the NNAT and the other one is not, and the parent says, well, are you going to do anything for my first grader for identifying? I know you talk about second through and sixth, but what do you do with that parent?
They're going to be retested again in second grade, so.
Just tell them that?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Yep.
How are you going to, using your word glorify, how are you going to celebrate these who are identified and they have achievements as they go along your plan?
So one of the big pieces, we have talked collectively about our CTE coursework and advanced coursework and just our paths that we're taking, even moving into some of the ideas and the zoning of schools just in the future. One of those pieces, and I call it glorifying because everybody's got a different skill set and different things that they want to touch into. We have students who are taking advanced coursework who also want to do construction technology, or they want to build computers, and they want to do various routes, but they're unsure of how to get there. So when I say glorify, we want to make sure that we learn the student and make sure that we put them on the path that's going to best suit them and highlight their abilities and skills. And that's not just strictly based on academics or what you've known to be essentially a gifted program in the past. We want to expand our opportunities, and that's cross-curricular approaches, making sure that we are introducing early and often to different various career opportunities and career paths, and help students realize that that just doesn't have to be a four-year college. It can be a trade, and it can be in various methods, and you can be talented in math and take the construction technology route. I've used that previously, or a science route, but helping students really build on the skills and the capacity that they have.
Very nice. I think that that's one side of the coin. The other side would be putting their names and faces in the public eye in the schools like our sports teams members are. Whether it's a trophy, whether it is an item or their name on a plaque, I think that is something that we can move to identify academics as something of equal or greater value to achieve as we do with our sport memorabilia.
I absolutely agree, and I think that there are, Mr. Dooley is doing a wonderful job. Even, I keep referring to the CTE realm because we have a lot of students, a lot of our adults even, who are doing a second career and moving into that realm, but you need that core skill, the core value. We did a lot of workplace or the Workforce Academy training this summer, and we talked about just those basic skills that are needed for students, but highlighting the academic achievements and helping them understand what will grow them to get to that piece, instead of just saying, you're taking math to take math. No, I want to take math because I'm interested in engineering or interested in the welding component and how big of a deal reading a ruler is going to be for a welder. So those components are particularly important to us as we're moving our students along, to make sure that we embody and embrace every part of them. And I, again, continue to go back to glorify, because we want to highlight and celebrate when they're hitting achievements along the way and letting them know it doesn't have to be an A on a test. It's okay to explore and go through productive failures to get to the places that you want to be.
And the schools do have, Mr. Lewis is my witness, he comes from Dunbar. And my daughter went there, on the wall, they have the names of students with A's, and I think they used to give them a plaque for all A's. I don't know, I'm assuming they still may be doing it. Yes, sir. That's a Dunbar tradition. So, and our schools go above and beyond. I have seen her being transported from middle school to high school to take classes during the school time and then bring it back. So thanks to our bus driver, you badmouth them all the time. They do extra work to transport these 1, 2, 3 kids, and then take them and bring them safely back to attend the next class. So these the programs do a lot of going above and beyond, which is not publicly, seen. It's quietly done behind the scenes. Go ahead, Dr. Day. I'm sorry.
I have a couple questions. So you've outlined for us the screening and the criteria you look at to identify students that belong in a gifted program. So once a student is identified in that way, we communicate some kind of an invitation to the family to participate.
Yes, sir.
So what if a student is not identified in that way, but the parent comes in and says, I really want Johnny to be in the gifted program, but he didn't meet your criteria? What happens?
Right. So what happens is we certainly want to embrace that, and we have those conversations. Communication is sent out whether students are identified or they're not.
Okay.
So we make sure that we do that. We make sure, again, in this plan, it's well outlined in what would help them follow. But we don't want to not provide opportunities that would be a subset of what that would be for the gifted program during our traditional school day. So there are still opportunities for students to grow, and I think that's the importance of making sure that we're testing again at that 6th grade level, which we had not been doing previously, to say, hey, I'm a late bloomer. Maybe I was a little slower go on reading abilities or comprehension or something of that nature, but I've been provided these opportunities through cross-curricular approach. I'm embedding that science with that, the richness of your math. I'm embedding the humanities approach. And once I get to 6th grade, I'm still pushing forward. I'm provided some additional opportunities, which we mentioned in here too. And there's a little bit of an expansion through the plan with what those opportunities could be. But then the retesting essentially in that 6th grade year to say, hey, how far have we come along, and how can we dial in and hone that in for that student?
Mrs. Lowry?
And also, just at the elementary level, I know, we always do enrichment activities.
Yes.
So if a student is not part of that group, they're still part of enrichment activities that teachers provide within the class.
And I have seen in action all these bullet points you have pointed out, because I bring up my little girl, when she was in Campbell County, I was paying $500 a semester tuition. So coming into the LCS system, you guys retest them to make sure they qualify. There is no hand-holding, spoon-feeding, or waving of. So I've seen that in action, and at least in one sample size of one. Other discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next one is Perrymont Park. Dr. Edwards,
Okay, yeah, I'm going to toss it over to Dr. Woodica. This is coming back with the resolution.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, and good evening to members of the board. This is a continuation of our item from last week, which is just the adoption of the formal resolution, dissolving our property and sending it back to the city. Yep. We'll be happy to take any questions you might have on the resolution.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So this is, the format of the resolution is sort of a standard thing, and we're just putting in the particulars
That's right.
of this.
Because we talked about it last.
The substance of it is just we're agreeing to release that property back to the city.
I so move.
Mr. Andrews, is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Lowry and Dr. Day. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie,
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
LCS-VaCorp membership resolution, Dr. Edwards.
Okay, I'm going to leave it back over there with Dr. Woodica.
Thank you again, Dr. Edwards. I am always so glad to bring good news to the board, especially good financial news. So as a part of our periodic review of our liability, workers' compensation, and property insurance, earlier, a couple of months ago, we worked with our broker, Scott Insurance, to take a look at our insurance coverages, who we were working with, that sort of thing. We identified an opportunity to work with the Virginia Association of Counties group self-insurance risk pool, transitioning away from a private insurance group, and ultimately providing our insurance for, again, those areas of liability, property insurance as well as workers' compensation. Now, this is different than, of course, the health insurance that we provide to our employees. This is the functional insurance that we do for doing business every single day. So as a result of that effort, we were able to save approximately $400,000 from the renewal from the prior company, so that's a positive thing.
Nice.
And we were able to either meet or exceed all the coverages that we previously had. So this comes you to authorize a resolution authorizing the superintendent to sign us up for this work. We thought it was a great thing to go ahead and do, and wanted to jump on it as fast as we could to go ahead and start saving those funds as quickly as we possibly can. One thing I want to point out is there is a document called the FY25 cover sheet. You don't have to open it, but essentially it is a listing of the coverages as well as the premiums that we pay for each one of those coverages. There is a concern that I have in terms of the listed replacement costs of all of our school buildings in case there is a major problem in one of those buildings, if there's a fire or something like that. We have an aggregate number of our total amount of replacement costs per occurrence. I am concerned that the replacement cost per school might be a little low because they're a little bit older numbers, and I use the prior numbers as well. I don't think it'll make a significant difference in future renewals, but those are items that we're going to update for future years as they call themselves VaCorp as an acronym. Come in and take a look at what we're doing. So I'm happy to take any questions you might have, and otherwise we would be happy to have a motion to approve the resolution.
A motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Mr. DePaul, Mr. Andrews, any further discussion?
So this is just something the school's doing, it's not employees?
Yes, ma'am. So this is
Okay,
this is
just
the school division's
Okay,
insurance
never
for
mind, cool.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Connors,
Yes.
Mr. Gilio,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes.
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie,
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is school board member reports. Gov School, Mrs. Lowry.
Okay, our meeting is tomorrow. So we will be doing new elections for this year before starting, and then our next meeting will be in December. I left everything at home, running out of the house too fast. So. But I read all over it and wrote it out yesterday. There were several things on there, but mainly they have 168 students. It was 148, but 168, and the 8 students that are attending. And when we do all the new elections, like we did for the Laurel School Board and stuff like that, we'll get going with all the required fiscal and everything else. So it's not till tomorrow.
Laurel, Mrs. Lowry,
Okay.
you're the chair of Laurel.
Yes, I'm now the chair
Dr.
of Laurel.
Edwards is the superintendent of the
Yep,
year.
And Ms. Jamie's also attends as our fiscal representative. Principal Lewis went over the financial and personnel reports after the new elections. There's still 2 new TVI positions, or 2 TVI positions that still need to be filled, so they're gonna do some thinking out of the box, maybe do it, because a lot of companies having people that will only do it by Zoom since COVID, so we're seeing how that'll work, so they're gonna look into that. A van was provided, so she thanked everybody from the different counties that come on the board. They got 4 picnic tables that were donated, so they just have to stain them. And the troop, I think, is 180. It will be helping with the Margaret Lipscomb Garden, going in and coming doing that too. So, but the school started off well and things are going well so far. So they're having to do some consolidations, but they're going to continue to look for those positions to be filled.
Thank you. STEM Academy, Mr. Connor.
Yes, we are scheduled to have our first board meeting on September 10th. And I spoke with Ms. Cash, who I already knew, because I used to schedule buses for her from Heritage in class before. So, but we intend to get together sometime later this week and maybe come over and see. I want to get a look at the facilities and talk with her some more.
Thank you. Financial Facilities, Chair DePaul.
Just so you know, I didn't vote. I was on the menu myself. So thank you, Anthony, for that. We reviewed the updates of the 2026 budget and summer construction products, and they're coming along. Perrymont Park plan, which we discussed tonight, We viewed this as a positive due to developed areas with lighted and lighted properties fare better than those that aren't. That was big. The health insurance plan update, we voted on that, and that, again, a very good positive with working better for the employees and also helping with our finance position. The budget document draft to create a better understanding, and this was rather interesting to keep the transparency of our reporting by creating a reporting template. So if you have a chance to look at that, I think this is going to be a nice addition.
Is that, like, where can we find it? Is it
Well, it's on,
to your agenda for the?
yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we actually haven't published it yet because that was just the working document.
No, that's what I'm saying. You can, it's not completed.
Yeah.
It is the template. They're working on it so that you can read that and see what's going to go into it.
Okay.
Or contribute if you'd like.
I didn't finish the, go ahead. Continue.
And we also had a discussion of a model to consolidate the school buildings. A lot of people say closing schools and things like that. When we applied this, when we set the task for the administration to do this, I was disappointed when it came back as change your vote, as was the answer. So I put time into it, and this is what came up. This does not come from committee. This is my idea that I shared, and we want to bring it to the board so people can think about it. I emailed it to you. You may have read it, might not have. 7th and 8th grade students are to be divided between Lincoln and Dunbar Middle with the intention of having them both identified as schools of innovation. They will also remain as 6th through 8th grade schools. Students from T.C. Miller and Sandusky will be transferred to the former Sandusky Middle School. Students from these two schools changing from 5th to 6th will be part of the K through 6th Sandusky. We're going to change that school. As the two middle schools approach maximum capacity, any overflow of 6th graders will be enrolled at the new K through 6th grade Sandusky. As space permits, other specialty learning programs may be housed there at that location also. This could be free space in other buildings to lessen school bus travel time for those students affected. Fort Hill will be transferred to T.C. Miller so that they may need more, as they need more space. As space permits, any other alternative programs may be housed there also. We've been experiencing lower classroom size, and our discipline problems have been going up, and we are not having an improvement in our, enough improvement in our scores. The risk of increased class size is noted. With more space in the alternative learning programs, disruptions will be reduced and discipline will improve. The point of this is that if you have a classroom of 20 students and 3 bad actors, you're going to have a disruption through the classroom. You can have a school class size of 28 with no disruptions, hypothetically, and you're going to have a better learning environment. Recognizing that smaller class sizes do provide for more direct teaching and learning opportunities, the decrease in discipline and increase in disruptive behavior is overshadowing this goal. Rezoning and unitary status are not an issue with this proposal and won't need to be addressed immediately, as complete blocks of students are being moved in their entirety. There's some challenges. It's never been done before, just like Bass was never done before. Now, if Bass is such a good idea, why isn't the entire school district mirroring Bass? And if Bass is not the ideal format, why is it still in existence? This K through 6 program has an opportunity for those that aren't ready to be into the junior high, high school area, arena. This has an opportunity to work similarly to the way Bass works. We get to, it was brought up that middle school principals should be involved in the decision-making. Well, we're asking people who are going to have their workload increased and not with a commensurate increase in salary. I would say, sure, let's listen to that, but let's listen to other people also. There's a lot of things that can be done to consolidate. We need to do this. The vote to change what we did, I didn't agree with, yet it happened. And this is an improvement where we can still have the consolidation. We can still go and work towards a more complete use of our facilities. The numbers work based on capacities. And in addition to that, in a second motion that suddenly came to me, since we're giving back property to the city of Perrymont, in order to fund Anthony Andrews' proposal of a new middle school, $65 million, I'm going to say, why don't we just, as you say, shoot for the moon, if not further away? Let's propose to city council that we take the landfill, beautiful, if you've ever been up there, you can see a beautiful view of the city, absolutely wonderful place to look up up to the, through the James. It'd be a great place for a casino. So let's propose to city council that a funding option be that we create a casino, that we have a casino come into the area to fund our school projects. If we're going to ask for people to fund this, which is where it's going to come from, it's going to come from the citizens. We're going to take the money from them, not a big tax proponent. So let's take it from people who are willfully willing, who are willing to give their money up for a service or an opportunity, casino, and have that as part of our funding for the future schools. It's working in Danville. It's probably going to be able to fund your school in a couple of years. So taking care of our immediate need of a budget shortfall, which we are always going to have, and putting into a plan for Anthony's school. And we're probably going to have to name.
Can I put that on the building?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just saying,
Dr.
Andrews School,
Andrews.
Dr. Andrews, I get that DR behind in front of it. I'm saying that these are things that can be done and probably have never been thought of before. With just giving an idea of closing 2 schools and not having a plan behind it, this is a plan that can work, and this should be a directive from the board to have the administration have it come to fruition. But it did not come from committee. This is something to be worked over, talked about. We don't have a lot of time. We need to make a decision, and I'm putting this out to everybody here so that we can have some time to digest it and maybe have this on the agenda for the work session.
Just to, many northeastern states have that K through 6 model.
That's how I grew up. That's how I started.
many
It
were
changed. It might work. Let's see how it works. We still have the other 2 middle schools, which will be 6 through 8. We were going to have one that's K through 6. Let's see how that works. There's going to be some 6th graders that aren't ready to go to that next step. We have some options here.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Next one is LACR Chair Jalil. LACR.
LACR has made progress on our breakfast, our annual legislative breakfast. It will be November 15th. We have our delegate and senator invited and scheduled to come. We are working on the food now and the entertainment. We have the venue of EC Glass in the room that it was held a couple of years ago as well. And things are making progress on that front.
Could you repeat the date, please?
November 15th,
November
doors open at 8 o'clock, and we'll start at 8:30 in the morning.
Thank you. Next one is Academic Success Committee Chair Lowry.
Okay, the kindergarten screener process was piloted, and it seemed like it went pretty well, because I talked to a couple of kindergarten teachers, and they were pretty happy, so. We're requesting benchmark results every quarter. So then since that's our new adoptive reading program, and to see how that's working. Also, we're going to invite community speakers. We found out that that the administration is already working with AVRIT and LU to help with some tutoring for students who need it, in an after-school, I believe, setting. And also looking at results for testing for like history, American government, civics, just not elementary, but upper as well, and for pre-K. And also, we're starting to get there, but maybe the pamphlet that we created last year that we showed all of you, it's sort of at a stopping point because it involves printing. So there's an idea of using a QR code, and then we could email, and then the businesses could put it out themselves, and if they need to print it, they can print it, but they could also just put a QR code up in their offices.
You made mention that they're working with AVRIT.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
We have a partnership with Averett. You sent that information to me last year. We met with them, Ms. Cruz and I met with them several times, went over the program, had great conversations with them. We are focusing this year on high school opportunities. And so we have partnered with Averett, and we are, the opportunity for our high school students is they can do 5 monthly sessions or 60 yearly sessions, which are free to the students. And then there's a lot of different content areas, focus areas that they can get tutoring in. So the information has been shared with our supervisor, who is over school counseling, and she is working with both high school counselors to get this out to our students and our families in various ways.
Thank you. The reason why I asked is I was contacted by someone from Averett. Just wanted an update. So the point is that you're working with them. It was someone who was on the outskirts of that.
Yes.
And I said I was going to ask the question tonight, so thank you very much for that.
You are very welcome. And I have been communicating with both Plexus, who is the platform, as well as the contact that you gave me from Averett. So we have been in communication back and forth multiple times. But we are moving forward now, and we have that partnership with Averett and Plexus to offer that opportunity to our families for our 9th through 12th grade students.
Super, thank you.
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Jalil, go ahead.
This reminds me, is this an appropriate time to give us an update on the outcome of the meeting with Liberty that you mentioned about tutoring? And
We're in the middle of, I think, committee.
We are in the
This
middle
is-
of committee
I can do
report.
that
Committee
when I
reports.
get to soup comments. Ms. Pugh and I can talk a little bit about just our Liberty meeting.
Oh, yes. Mhm.
Next one is PI, Mr. Andrews and Dr. Tinsley.
And we meet Thursday, right?
Yeah.
8 o'clock?
8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next one is Ed Foundation, Mr. DePaul and Mr. Jalil.
Mr. DePaul,
I haven't been to a meeting, haven't been contacted about it yet.
Right.
Thank you. Next one is Beacon of Hope, Mr. Andrews and Mrs. Preston.
Okay, Beacon of Hope, I had an opportunity to go to Beacon of Hope's annual meeting in which they celebrated some folks that were going off the board, including myself. So it was a good opportunity to meet and greet and kind of catch up with things that are going on with them. The new EC Glass Future Center director was there, Kara Douglas, and she's the person that hosted the Glow Up and at Glass event that gave students an opportunity to receive some services like haircuts and nails and makeup and all that kind of stuff before enrollment, and they're hoping to be able to extend that to include more than just that one school next year. The Future Center team will be taking some students from Heritage and Glass to 2 colleges in September, but I don't know what those 2 colleges are at this point. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
And then, yes, ma'am. They are launching a new program this month called called at Perrymont Elementary School called Promise Pals. They're connecting 2 of our Beacon scholars as pen pals with each 3rd and 5th grade, each student from 3rd to 5th grade, excuse me. Each month, our scholars will send videos and letters to their adopted classroom and will visit Perrymont during their winter and summer breaks. So, yeah, it'd be cool. Yep.
Thank you.
Promise Pals.
Next one is Dr. Edwards, Superintendent comments.
Oh, sure, thank you. Love hearing all that community connection to our schools. Speaking of our schools, it is back to school night time, and all of you should be getting newsletters from the various schools. If you have not either signed up or not on their mailing list, let me know so that I can connect you with the information that comes out from the schools. You will see in their newsletters, they're all different, and they each principal and building has a flair as to how they present their newsletters, but there's information, for example, about the upcoming back-to-school nights, which are all starting, I think the first one is Thursday, the 12th, you'll have it at Dunbar, right, is, not the 12th, the 5th, Dunbar, and then Paul Monroe is also coming up, but there is a list of all of them if you'd like to just stop by, support the schools during their back-to-school events. That would be great. The newsletters, in the newsletters, you'll also see some of the information celebrating some of the academics of our students. So often our principals will highlight both the students who are super achievers, students with great attendance, great civic leaders, students who are demonstrating all the things that we want. And again, each school is slightly different in how they present that and share that information with their families, as well as information just about good practice at home, right? Parents are our partners, so our school nurses often give tips, particularly as we're coming up to the winter, of ways to keep our kids safe, as well as our school counselors often give information as part of our anti-bullying program. There are things in there, tips and strategies, and just some best practices on working with your children at home for academics. So it is a great resource to get additional information. It's one of those things when you say, how are we closing the achievement gap? Well, here's one of those little small nuggets of things that we share with our families that you also have access to with that. Some other things, just to mention, just want to thank everybody because we have not had a formal meeting since. A couple of wonderful things like convocation, which again just met with the mayor not too long ago, still raving about coming to convocation and having a wonderful celebratory time. Big thank you to the staff and particularly staff at Heritage who hosted us and did all the things, but staff in general who really sent us the message that said, let's make this day all about the celebration of us, the great work, and get us excited for the kids. And I think we did a great job of doing that. Wonderful speakers, one is still over here in the room, as well as a good showing of our students who made the day, everything from our drum line that welcomed them off the bus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, probably more than that, maybe 7 sets of cheerleaders between JV, varsity, high school, and the middle school cheerleaders were all there to celebrate our students. A combined band for the national anthem, our ROTC, right? And I'm trying not to forget anybody going through all of our students who participated in the program. Plus, we had some stunt doubles for some of the administrators who could not be here, who willingly helped us. Everything from stunt double Amy, thank you to the Cole children who helped out, as well as a big, huge thank you to the Ed Foundation who provided all of the refreshments, and always a great joy to work with them. But Dawn couldn't be here, but another student stepped up and said, I'll be playing the role of Miss Wise, and took over our refreshment area along with some volunteer students who also came out to help out. So I want to stop and just pause at that because it does take a tribe to do all of that work together, as well as just, we know being in the gym is very difficult in terms of acoustics. One of the things that we worried about, but we are grateful for our communications team to do all of that wonderful work as well. First day of school, it has come and gone. We are in the throes of school right now, which is really wonderful to see how great some of our kids are already immediately. I have to remember, like, it's only been a couple of days, and these kids are rocking it in terms of being in school. We had a special visitor visit R.S. Payne last week. The Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears came and visited R.S. Payne at dismissal time, which was just wonderful for her to be there and really just get an idea of the school too. We dismissed the children. She had an opportunity to speak with kids in our auditorium, as well as staff who were there working with our kids. Our SSOs who were also there helping out, Dr. Gupta, the mayor, and our wonderful R.S. Payne team. So let me just give a shout out to them because they were amazing in making that happen in such a short period of time. And we always feel blessed when someone wants to come to our schools and spend time with our students. And trust me, we have a bunch of future lieutenant governors, mayors, SSO officers, principals, and superintendents in that little crew of, I think they were like 4 to maybe 12 years old in that group. So thank you there. C&I team has just been doing a lot of work in training, and they've been making sure that those of us at the division level, myself, Dr. Wodica, and Mrs. Pugh, are also in those training sessions on professional learning communities, professional learning processes, which go along with some of the work you're going to see our principals present when they come share their goals and the things that they're going to talk about there. So grateful for them. Getting to, let me back it up. Did get an opportunity to go to the football game on Friday night, the first one for Heritage. So again, great to be out in community and just support our teams as they are doing the things, as well as getting geared up for our volunteers and our work with Liberty University. So we are doing a couple things, one with Liberty, but also with University of Lynchburg on the partnership side. So I'll let Ms. Pugh do a little bit about Liberty and what we're doing right now, and I'll talk about University of Lynchburg.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. Yes, we have had several meetings with Dr. Dempsey and Dr. Raleigh from Liberty University, as well as some of their other staff who are in their CSER, which is their Christian service, community service area for those students. And so we've been working, we've had a partnership with them in the past. Obviously, we have many teachers who come to us from Liberty University, but we have our staff member, Sarah Likens-Kissel, who is in the Curriculum and Instruction Department, and she is in charge of working with all of our colleges and universities, but she's worked with them this year in their education department, and so far we have over 50 practicum students that have been placed with lots of different opportunities, and that may include some of their student teachers, but this is also pre-service, pre-student teaching work as well. Whitney Boyd, who is in family and community relations, has also been working with the CSER department to create pathways for other students who may not be in the School of Education to come in and get connected with our students, whether it might be a lunch buddy or a recess buddy, or coming in to read, or tutoring, supporting in mentoring. This is not the first time that we've had that intentional instructional model that we're working with for the mentors. So a lot going on there. We've met with them several times. We'll continue to meet with them, but we're really excited about the opportunities for our LCS students to work with their students, not only in the School of Education, but within other schools and colleges within the university.
Can I say something? The secret hand behind is the Dr. General Costin and the Dave Brett, who's the vice president. So, you met Dr. Dempsey, but Dr. Costin has given his full blessings to all the things we can do through Dr. Tinsley to help us out. So thank you, Dr. Costin. Go ahead.
So they, in addition to helping us with our little learners, our students, Liberty has also offered to work with us as we move through with our bigger learners, which are the adults, with any professional development that we need, or assistance in assessing programs and things like that. So we're excited about that part as well, which is brings me to University of Lynchburg, which is also working with us to help with our bigger learners, our adults. And you all know that the teacher/educator shortage is real, and we have to do everything that we can to not only encourage our young people to go into the profession, so we have to incentivize it and make it look like it's just the best profession ever, but also we have staff who are instructional assistants or career changers who also want the opportunity to become teachers. So to the degree that Lynchburg City Schools could offer multiple pathways to help our staff become licensed and certified, we will. We've done some things, with the classified teacher. We've opened it up to I Teach, Grand Canyon University. We do some work with Liberty, and we are in discussions with University of Lynchburg to offer some coursework here so that our staff can continue to find those easier pathways to licensure. So as much as we can and as quickly as we can build that workforce, because we do, if you look at our workforce, it is either very young if we don't do all that we can within the first 5 years, research shows that teachers start to leave the profession, or they're the baby boomers who are on their way to retirement and leaving the profession. So we're going to continue to do our work with that. So that's it on instruction, but now I got to get to the other part, because who doesn't like a good playground or a good building? That too. You just threw me for a little bit of a loop here in my last little part, because just in talking to parents and trying to be very transparent, parents want to know that we on I think July 23rd, the school board did vote, as Mr. DePaul said, to rescind previous plans and rebuild Sandusky Elementary School. I believe Dr. Day and Dr. Gupta wrote a letter to city manager and sent that over somewhere around July 30th. So if you are a Lynchburg City School parent, clock is ticking. It has been 30 days and they have not heard from us. So what is the next steps with the plan with that? And I can speak for the work that our administrative team is doing in advance of Finance Committee, I believe is meeting next week. I've asked Dr. Wodeka to at least do some research and get some numbers about what it costs to build a building. I know what it cost 7 years ago, and I could tell you one thing, it didn't go down for that. So we were prepared to present that, or at least share that with the school finance committee, just to continue with following up on the vote. Also, in preparation, I don't know what the plans are, and I don't know if either of you have heard anything from City Council regarding if that's an item for discussion, and if that might even be what the joint meeting is about. I don't know yet. But when we have more information on that, I just say that to say that lessons learned from our parents last year, because they said we didn't communicate often, right? We communicated early, then we got quiet, and then we didn't communicate often. So this is my attempt at least at communicating often. But I do want to turn it over to Dr. Wodeka, just so the full board gets an idea of some of the things that we're looking into. And please tell us if this is a no-go. My feelings won't be hurt if we're doing something different, but I do want to do due diligence to our obligation to following the will of the full board.
Yes, ma'am. So as Dr. Edwards said, we wanted to take a look at some potential solutions to this question. So I don't want to call them scenarios or options. We've been through those nouns before,
Yeah.
but the potential solutions that might address the board's vote as well. And so that we understand the intent of the board is to have a new Sandusky Elementary School from that vote. So we asked Dominion 7 to take a look at, again, potential solutions, maybe think of some creative scenarios in order to address that. And we'll talk a little bit about zeroing in a little bit on budget numbers for this project, so you're aware of that. What these numbers include are a 20% contingency based on the numbers. That's because we're very early in this process. We want to be clear about that. Also includes design costs. So we work with Dominion 7, who has worked with us quite a bit on a number of different projects. They've been a part of the facilities master plan, designed a number of projects for us, but they came up with several potential solutions. The first one is a new, larger elementary school that we've talked about. The number we kind of batted around was about 50 million. That number coming to 87,000 square feet, which is about double of what we have now, is actually closer to $60 million. Another solution might be to say, well, if we aren't going to consolidate schools, which is what the board has said from that vote, a school of the same capacity that you have now, a completely new school on the same site, at around 58,000 square feet. So we're about 46,000 square feet, so a little bit bigger, but about the same capacity. That's at $43 million. And then a final solution, which potentially makes some sense, would be to do a very extensive renovation and expansion to the existing building. So take parts of what the building is there, eliminate some of it, and build onto the property at 46, moving from 46,000 square feet to 60,000 square feet, and that would be around $31 million. And so again, that includes those are preliminary numbers. So that is it kind of gives you some context about where we might be. But we wanted to make sure you knew that we were thinking about this, trying to come up with some potential scenarios that are potential solutions. Sorry, not scenarios. That we'll talk more about with the Finance and Facilities Committee next week. But just wanted you to know we're working on it. It's not something that you took a vote and we said forget it, and but we wanted you to know it's going to continue on.
My only question is, did we hear back from the city council yet when you sent the thing?
I defer to
No? Okay.
It will come up in the agenda, I'm assuming, during the budget discussion.
I just wanted to ask you to repeat, you listed sort of three general options that Dominion 7 looked at. The third one, you talked about an extensive expansion, and you said from 46,000 to what?
Around 60,000 square feet.
60?
60, yes, sir.
Yeah, 60,000 square feet. Okay, I just didn't catch the last number. Thank you.
Do you have the Dominion 7 report in black and white?
We have a document.
Would you put it on board doc as part of the finance and facilities, or the,
We'll do it as part of finance.
or the superintendent comments, so people have, a view of, because this first time I'm hearing a Dominion 7 report. So let's make it a public document so public can see it.
Yep, so we'll do this as a part of the finance and facilities
Yeah,
committee.
so the purpose of announcing it today, and I kind of took a page out of Mr. Jalil's book, who said, how do people know how to come to something if we don't tell them up front that this may be a discussion item? And this is a pretty big item that our whole community has had their head wrapped around, and I certainly would not be telling fibs if I didn't say there are parents who contact me regularly who say, Dr. Edwards, what's the plan? What are we doing? The board took a vote, now what? So we want to make sure that on the administrative side, we're doing due diligence to at least position the board with information to make whatever decisions the board chooses to make. And our work was based on the vote from July 23rd. So if there's a different alternative that the full board would like us to explore, we are happy to do that work. But we wanted to let the public know that we were out there getting very preliminary numbers of just estimates of what it might cost to. This is by no means a full-blown, why didn't you ask 37 questions? It was just like, what does it cost to build?
Let's just get a start.
Right, what does it cost to build a building? And the sizes are just give us ranges, nothing that we have settled on or decided that that's what we wanted to do. But we are trying to be extremely transparent about the work that we are doing so the community can follow us and understand, at least where information is coming from and when information is being presented and shared. So I know that's going to be a discussion at
Was it a
finance.
new contract with Dominion 7, or they're grandfathered into the previous contract we had?
This is just work, this is a very quick back-of-the-envelope
Is it
analysis.
pro
they did.
bono work, or did we pay them for?
They're not billing us for this work.
So they have not paid
This
anything?
is a very
No, this
quick
is-
and dirty.
Very,
This is an
very-
ask, like,
Yeah.
hey, by the way,
Help us through this, yeah.
Okay.
nothing, yeah.
I do have a question. You can ignore my question if this is not appropriate place, but previously, we had this, when we were still contemplating improvements at Bass, we had a grant for, I think it was 4.5 million, and you had said that there was a possibility that even though we're not pursuing the enlargement at Bass, we might still be able to use that grant money for other things at Bass. What is the status of that?
Sure. So we've, since we've had that conversation, we've had lots of back and forth with the VDOE. They haven't given us a final answer on that. But what I think is going to happen is they're going to say, let's take a look at a smaller project and then adjust that grant amount now to 30% of that.
Okay.
So my guess is there won't be $4.5 million available. It'll be some smaller number based on a smaller project.
That grant, does it have a local match over a period of time? Each year, the locality has to match like 4.5 million for next 3 years or 2 years?
What the grant,
The fine
the
print in
school
there.
construction assistance program requires is that the city continue to fund at the same operating level during the duration of the construction of the project. So, and that's every school construction assistance project we had. So that is, has not been a concern before because that's, based on our operating budget. Essentially what they want to say is, we're not going to shut down the school while the project is going on.
So basically, they're asking for a guarantee of level funding at least when the project starts, right? The funding level the city has, the local match, will be continued for the duration of the project.
Of the duration of the actual construction of the project.
Right, thank you. Next one is board comment. Mr. Connor?
I'd like to ask, 'cause I was real interested in what Mr. DePaul shared. When can we get some type of draft on that idea you had as far, I don't know about the casino part, but the part about the Sandusky and the 1 through 6?
K through 6.
K through 6, all right.
What would you like to see? As far as numbers, as far as capacities?
Yeah, just something that, so when we can bring it to the board and start to really make a discussion as we're discussing.
Well, I agree.
Building, it might be the solution.
Well, the only reason why I'm saying that is to, the idea of if we don't get the money, which they've already said they're not, the idea is we need to have an alternate plan. So yes, I will put those numbers together and go from there.
Because I was curious, what's the size of the Sandusky Middle School?
It's big.
The current,
You mean
I'm in
student
there
capacity?
every
no,
week. The building
These
itself.
are-
6,000 square feet.
So the current,
46.
not the current elementary school, the current middle
Oh,
school,
I'm
just
sorry,
built
sorry,
middle
yeah.
school. What's the square foot of the current?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
'Cause we're talking about Sandusky Middle turning
sir.
it into a large elementary school,
K through 6.
K through 6. So can we find out what the
Sure.
size of that building is?
Yep. I would, if I thought that, I would have put it in this report because I just had done the numbers and they worked before. So thank you, I will do that.
Thank you. Mr. Jalil?
Yes, some things I wanted to mention about things I enjoyed this past month. I enjoyed Enrollment Day very much. That was much fun to see a number of different schools and what they did. I enjoyed the food and dessert. I didn't get to enjoy the haircut, but I saw that people enjoyed haircuts, which was fun to see. And all the parents and the kids, it was a joyful time. I did enjoy Convocation as well. Enjoyed the the emphasis put on the kids and just making it a great start to a year. I was happy with LCS quickly catching issues that arose the first and second week of school, the various issues that come up always when you start something. I'm especially happy with Paul Monroe, Darrington, and Bass's English reading SOLs from 2021 to 2022, going to 2022 to 2023 school year. Great improvements for these three schools and staying consistent in the upper numbers. But I am not going to be happy if there's any complacency on test scores, on academics in our school year. We need to break away, if I am going to reemphasize that, it is a must. We need to break away from our standard protocol, and we need to increase our academic rigor, expectations, and celebrations when we achieve these things of improved scores and participation from the students in their own education, including the participation of the parents to make it happen even quicker. I am a little unhappy with the Virginia Daily Education News because we do great things here with CTE and other things that have happened here, but we are rarely mentioned in my simple observation of dozens and dozens of news articles, and we're not there. Very often we're not there. In addition, there are meetings by the VSBA that are in Rustburg and Roanoke and everywhere but here. In my estimation, I haven't seen any. So I would like that to improve. I'm not happy with the Virginia Education Foundation allowing an inappropriate book to be set in our school system here, but I'm happy with LCS catching it so quickly and removing it. I am very happy with the board approving the Constitution Day policy or the motion I made. I wanted to say that on Constitution Day, if everyone would like to go, they're having a Nationalization Day at Thomas Jefferson's Poplar Forest at 11 a.m. on Constitution Day. I may be delivering books, Constitution books that day, but I will try to make it over there. It is a great thing if you see someone get naturalized, someone become an American citizen, because the joy and the work they put into it to achieve such a thing is a different, it's a different type of celebration. It's a different type of environment. I've been to one before, and I would encourage people to go to see the naturalization ceremony. And again, I want to emphasize that if history is going to be something that we have a grasp on in Lynchburg City Schools, we need to consider it an emergency because the numbers are so low on that particular subject. Please, let us focus on history. Let us focus on the things that we need to bring up, and I'll be very happy to hear the results. I heard a bad reputation elsewhere that history is not taught as it happened before 1877. If history isn't taught, world history or American history before 1877, then we don't have much context. So let's emphasize those things. And the last thing is, I was not happy with this wall I mentioned before, and my idea is to make this wall like this wall, except have all of the different school boards that existed over the past so many years to have all their pictures and names and faces appear if someone wants to apply that idea. So we can look at one year and we can say more context. Oh, that was such a peaceful year. Look, Martin Luther King Jr. was on the board. Or another year was very controversial. Oh, look, Ted Cruz was on the board. Things like that. You can have more context if you could see all the people from the board in a particular year. So that's my idea for that wall. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Andrews?
I yield my time.
Dr. Day?
I don't have any comments to make.
Mrs. Preston?
Is there a list somewhere of the various, I've been getting all the newsletters, but a list of the back-to-school nights and dates and so forth? Is it?
I had the principals just kind of put most of them. I think I have most of them. I can copy that and toss that into my
That would be great.
update
Thank
for
you.
you.
I appreciate that. And thanks for all the hard work that everybody does. This is a challenging job, but you do a great job of it.
Mr. DePaul?
I yield my time.
Mrs. Lowry?
I enjoyed going to the Minnick School, and we have a Minnick School here now, which helps our children that are challenged. So the teachers there seem wonderful. It's a good opening. Looking forward to attending some of the sports events and reading to classes again this semester. I like Mr. DePaul's thinking outside the box. That's very good because sometimes you just have to use what you have. And also, for the superintendent, I have a question. I was reading through some of the newsletters, and what does a student-led conference at a teacher-parent conference look like?
Student-led conference?
Yeah,
Where the
student-led
student
conference.
sort of sits with their parent while the teacher.
So they're not really leading the
The
conference.
student is talking about his or her performance.
Oh,
So
okay.
I might be sitting with my teacher and my mom and dad and saying, okay, here's where I did the following, blah, blah, blah. Here's what I'm doing. Here's where I'm struggling. This is the work that I've been doing, and
Okay.
blah, 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 blah.
And what grade does that start at?
Is that, could be, some of them could be in elementary school, so, because I've seen.
I didn't know if it's like
Yeah.
first grade, second grade, third grade.
I've seen young kids do it.
Yeah,
as
some
early
can,
as,
some can.
and I've seen teachers use it as a strategy with, you're going to talk about this, but I'm going to talk about
Okay.
attendance and things like
All
that.
right,
So
cool.
it's a great way to get students involved in their own learning and also verbalizing the successes that they've done and any kind of remediation and challenge they're facing. And
Yeah. Okay, great, great.
Thank you. Dr. Tinsley?
I like all the great partnerships that are happening with schools and businesses and whatnot with our students. I'd encourage that to continue, mature the ones that we have, and look for new opportunities. I think it's wonderful to get the kids out and about, and to get our business leaders in schools starting to interact with our kids, so that there can be those partnerships that extend past graduation. So I would really encourage that as you move forward. So, thank you.
You know, nothing makes me happy or unhappy, but I'm happy to yield my time to the two pillars of you, Dr. Edwards, Ms. Pugh and Dr. Bodka. If you have anything to add for all the good things you're doing for making our kids.
Absolutely. I'm just really proud of the work of all of the teams that we have, but especially really in instruction and programs where they've been really focusing on providing teachers with the resources that they need to focus on the Virginia Literacy Act, to professional development, the resources they're getting into classrooms and supporting, doing observations. Really proud of the work that Student Services is doing in terms of supporting our students and making sure that our students have a good start to the school year in terms of their social and emotional health and learning, as well as academic learning. So I, really want to give a shout out to Ms. Cruz and to Dr. Brown for the teams that they lead, because it really has been boots on the ground. We are 2 weeks into school, and things are moving along, and I am just very proud of the work that they are doing and proud of the way that our teachers are responding. There's a lot to be done. And it's a busy day, a heavy load, but really proud of the way that they're responding and supporting our students.
Thank you for everything you do, Dr. Wartica.
Well, thank you. And so, as Ms. Pugh said, our staff really makes the work happen. And I really want to specifically identify this month our transportation employees. The start of school is always tough in transportation. Mr. Conrad probably knows that better than anybody at this table. But as we get settled in, there are always challenges. But I will tell you that we've seen tremendous growth in that department. Tremendous improvements over the last couple of years, and so I'm really thrilled with the positive attitude that we're seeing in that department, the willingness to work together. I'm really thrilled with the direction of where we're going and growing off of the great work of folks who were in the past. So really thank you to the transportation employees who, again, have a tough job, especially the first couple of weeks of school. We're getting settled in as we make adjustments to the routes and that sort of thing, but we're really proud of the work we're doing.
You want to say, Dr. Edwards?
Yeah, the two pillars over here, the bookends, as we all call ourselves, along with the rest of our senior team, is just fantastic to work with. And there's a healthy competition here. I'm surprised you didn't mention all of the wonderful work that your operations teams are doing in terms of planning and really connecting everything they do in facilities and nutrition and transportation directly to what you do in instruction. And that has been great to see that. And if you want to see somebody beam on one of our PL days, I don't know if you know, with all the downsizing, that Dr. Wodeka, in addition to having the operations side, he is also the, I don't know what to call you, supervisor for athletics, arts, and all things. So
Health and PE.
The health and PE, yes. So much like we have, supervisors that work in those areas, he is the supervisor that works in those areas, and he also facilitates PD and does all of that wonderful work with those departments. And I think, and Mr. Luce will tell me that the departments are feeling better served in terms of just their needs being met. They're often those are singletons, right? If you might be the only art teacher in the building, but the work that Dr. Wodeka is doing with them and the way that he has empowered them as a team is just refreshing. So I just wanted to say thank you to both of you for all of that. And then three people who often don't get recognized as much. Two of them would be Mrs. Spinner and Mrs. Cole, who work upstairs in our office, and they are all things. They are backup transportation calls when transportation lines overflow. They are parent resources. They are, how can I help you? How can I direct you? They are, come downstairs, we don't know where this, what this concern is. We need someone to talk to the parents. Go to the back, we've got an order. We don't know where that goes either. And they've just been wonderful at the beginning of the school year, managing all of the things and keeping us in line in terms of, anything that we need to address and their help. So I'm really happy to have them in the office, and it really is only two of them, and they manage very, very well up there. The other person is Chuck Yarborough, and I know people probably think we have this big database office somewhere back there that just cranks out all of these comparisons all the time. That's Chuck. We have one person.
Yeah.
I mean, we really do. We have one person. So as you're asking us for data, it's an email or a phone call to Chuck, and we get in line in the queue, and some of us can get ahead of the queue, but others of us, sometimes Chuck will tell us, you're just gonna have to wait for that. So if you ever hear any of us say, if you want some data that compares X to Y and Z and things like that, and we didn't give it to you with immediacy, it's because the office of Chuck is probably serving teachers first, is where he does, and principals second. So the data that he puts out for instruction and for the things that All Things Buildings need to do their work is a priority, and he has no problems telling us, you're just gonna have to wait for that, which I do love about him with that. The other thing is that he tries to make things possible. So if a principal or if a staff member asks for, hey, can you give me information that will help me here, he does it. And Dr. Ruby, you probably the person who's been on the board the longest. When I first arrived 7 years ago, there was no Office of Chuck, and there was very little data except for VDOE data, right? We did not have as much information that we can pull out, and in just 7 years, the volume, and you guys see it because I'm always doing snippets for you of pieces of information that he makes interactive for building and teacher staff. So just a shout out to him and his continued support and service because he is foundational to our work in closing the achievement gap and dealing with student behaviors and support. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, and
Yeah.
we cannot leave, we're praising everybody and leave Miss Day out of the picture because then we are in. And one thing, the board members, Mr. Andrews is quiet. He always says, brother, we need to change the salaries all the time. So hopefully this year will be the year your wish will come true, where Mr. Lewis will be happy that the teacher salaries will go up, and hopefully we can do the $17 minimum for our hourly employees. So thank you very much. The Finance and Facilities Committee is Tuesday, this September 10th at 3:30. The Discipline Data Review is September 12th at 3:30. LACR is September 17th at 3:30. Next school board work session is September 17th at 5 p.m. And on record, I won't be here that day. Dr. Day will be chairing the committee, so I apologize. I have to miss that meeting on September 17th. Academic Success Committee is September 18th at 3:30. I won't be here either that day. And the Joint City Council School Board, we're still trying to figure out a meeting day sometime in October.
October the 22nd.
Is that definite?
It's not definitely, she's still waiting on a couple of people to
Okay, but
apply.
that's the current plan.
That's the current plan, is to have it the 22nd.
So 22nd is tentative. And once it's finalized, we'll announce publicly. Having said that, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.